It's a strange thing when a song feels less like a performance and more like a confession. You hear the words, and they're so specific, so raw, you can't help but wonder. Was the singer just playing a part? Or were they telling you their own story, right there in the open, hidden behind a melody? Sometimes a song lines up with an artist's life so perfectly, it feels like a prophecy. It feels like they knew what was coming. This happens with one of his songs. It's a ballad. It's not one of the hip-shaking rock and roll numbers that made him a legend. It's not one of the grand, sweeping Vegas anthems. It's a quiet, heartbreaking song about the end of a family. It's about a man and a woman who can't make it work anymore, and most importantly, it's about the child caught in the middle. When you listen to it and you know what was happening in his life when he recorded it, the question isn't just a fun piece of trivia. It feels essential. Did he use this song to predict his own divorce? To answer that, you have to go back to a specific time. A time when the king of rock and roll was still a king, but his castle was starting to feel very empty. The early 1970s should have been a triumphant period for him. He was back. After years in Hollywood making movies that ranged from fun to forgettable, he had returned to live performing. The '68 comeback special had reminded the world who he was. He was electric, dangerous, and better than ever. He followed it up with a residency in Las Vegas that redefined what a Vegas show could be. He was selling out every night, a living legend in a white jumpsuit, commanding the stage like no one else could. He had his own jet, he had Graceland, he had his wife, Priscilla, and his young daughter, Lisa Marie. From the outside, he had everything. But the outside view is often a carefully constructed facade. The reality was much more complicated. The life of a superstar is not a normal life. And the life of a superstar's wife is even less normal. Their marriage had been born out of a fairy tale, a young girl meeting the world's biggest star. But fairy tales don't always account for the daily grind of reality. His life was a whirlwind of touring, recording, and Vegas shows. He lived nocturnally, surrounded by his entourage, the so-called Memphis Mafia. His world was a bubble, and inside that bubble, he was the center of the universe. Everyone's life revolved around his schedule, his moods, his needs. Priscilla was a young woman trying to grow up in that bubble. She was a wife and a new mother, but she was also isolated. While he was on the road, she was at home. When he was home, he was surrounded by his crew, playing games, watching movies, and living a life that didn't always have room for a quiet family dynamic. The connection that had once been so strong began to fray under the strain of distance and different lifestyles. She wanted a partner, a husband who was present. He was a global icon, a job that never really ends. The cracks were there for a while, little arguments, long silences, a growing emotional distance that a big house and lots of money couldn't fill. He had his affairs on the road. It was almost an unspoken part of the rock and roll lifestyle and something many people in their circle chose to look past. But then Priscilla, feeling alone and seeking a connection, began to find one elsewhere. She started taking karate lessons, and her instructor was a man named Mike Stone. With him, she found a sense of normalcy and an identity separate from being Elvis's wife. Their relationship deepened. The breaking point came in late 1971. Priscilla sat him down in his hotel suite in Las Vegas and told him she was leaving. The conversation, by all accounts, was not a screaming match. It was heavy with a sad finality. This wasn't a threat or a plea for him to change. It was a statement of fact. She didn't love him anymore. Their life together wasn't working. It was over. Imagine that moment. For a man who was adored by millions, who could have anything he wanted with a snap of his fingers, this was a rejection he couldn't control. This was personal. This was real. This was a failure that fame couldn't fix. He was hurt. He was angry. But underneath it all, he was a father. His primary concern, and hers, was their daughter, Lisa Marie. How do you end a marriage without destroying a child's world? How do you explain to a little girl that mommy and daddy won't live together anymore? This is the exact emotional landscape where the song was born, and here's the crucial part. Elvis didn't write it. He rarely wrote his own songs. He was an interpreter, a master at taking a piece of music and pouring his own soul into it, making it his. The words came from someone who knew him better than almost anyone, his longtime friend and bodyguard, Red West. Red was part of the inner circle. He had been there from the beginning. He had seen the good times and the bad. He was not just an employee, he was a friend who had a front row seat to the slow, painful dissolution of Elvis and Priscilla's marriage. He saw the distance, he heard the whispers, he felt the tension, and as it happened, Red was going through his own marital problems at the same time. His own separation was weighing heavily on his mind. One day, Red was working with another songwriter, Richard Minnegra. They were trying to come up with a song. Manegra had a melody, a chord progression that felt sad and reflective. Red, full of the pain from his own life and the pain he was witnessing in his friend's life, started to put words to the music. The lyrics that came out were not about a generic breakup. They were incredibly specific. They were about a couple making the difficult, mature decision to part ways for the sake of their child. It was a conversation, a quiet, heartbreaking agreement. The song paints a picture. It starts with a simple, painful truth. We can't go on together with suspicious minds. Oh wait, that's a different song, a different kind of turmoil. This one was different. This one wasn't about suspicion and mistrust. It was about acceptance, about an ending that had already arrived. The opening lines set the scene. A couple is talking. They've reached the end of the road. There's no more fighting to be done. The decision has been made. The lyrics focus on the child. Someday, when she's old enough to understand, she'll know it was for the best. This line is the heart of the matter. It's the justification, the hope that a parent clings to in the middle of a divorce. They are doing this painful thing now so that their child can have a better, more honest future, free from the tension of a broken home held together by pretense. It's a direct echo of the conversations Elvis and Priscilla were having. Their main goal was to protect Lisa Marie. Another line cuts just as deep. There's nothing left to do but go our separate ways and pick up the pieces of a shattered dream. It's a line of pure resignation. The dream was the fairy tale wedding, the happy family at Graceland. Now, that dream is broken. There's no talk of fixing it. There's no anger or blame. There's just the sad, practical task of moving on. Red West knew he had something powerful. He knew it was Elvis's story. It was his story too, but it fit his friend's situation like a glove. He took the song to Elvis. It was a delicate moment. Presenting a song this personal to a man who is actively living through the pain it describes could go very wrong. But Elvis listened, and he understood. He heard his own life in those words. He heard his own heartbreak, his own worries about his daughter, his own sad acceptance of the situation. He knew he had to record it. The recording session took place on March 27, 1972, at RCA's studio in Hollywood. This was not long after Priscilla had officially moved out. The wound was still fresh. The pain was immediate. You can hear it in his voice on the recording. This is not the swaggering king. This is not the playful movie star. This is a man whose world has just been turned upside down. His vocal performance is a masterclass in subtlety and restraint. He doesn't oversing it out. He doesn't milk the drama. He sings it with a profound sense of weariness and sorrow. When he sings the line, "It's not the life that she's used to, and it's not the life for me," you can feel the weight of two worlds colliding. Priscilla's desire for a normal life and his inability to provide one. He wasn't just singing lyrics written by a friend. He was testifying he was reading a page from his own diary out loud for the world to hear. The session was reportedly a somber affair. The musicians were professionals, but they were also part of his world. They knew what was going on. They gave him the space to deliver the song with the honesty it required. He sang take after take, each one filled with a quiet dignity and an almost unbearable sadness. The final result is a recording that is perfectly polished yet emotionally raw. The gentle piano, the soft backing vocals, the steady rhythm section, it all creates a bed for his voice to lay out the painful truth. So, let's go back to the original question. Did he predict his own divorce with this song? The timing makes the word predict a little tricky. A prediction usually comes before an event. This song wasn't created in a vacuum months or years before the split. It was written and recorded right in the middle of it. The separation had already happened. The divorce was inevitable, so maybe predict isn't the right word. A better word might be chronicle, or document, or confession. The song didn't foretell the future. It captured the present moment with devastating accuracy. It was a real-time report from the front lines of a collapsing marriage. It was art imitating life, as life was happening. What makes it feel like a prediction is how perfectly it articulated the way their separation would play out. The song is not angry, it's not bitter. It's about two people trying to do the right thing to end their relationship with as much grace as possible for their daughter. And that is exactly what Elvis and Priscilla did. When their divorce was finalized in 1973, they didn't have a messy public court battle. They didn't drag each other's names through the mud. In fact, on the day the divorce was granted, they famously walked out of the courthouse together, holding hands. They smiled for the cameras. It was a picture that confused many people. Why would a divorcing couple look so friendly? The song provides the answer. Let's not drag it on, let's not be bitter. We'll be better friends than we have been. They were choosing to end their marriage, but not their relationship. They would remain connected, not as husband and wife, but as co-parents and friends who still cared for each other. They were picking up the pieces, just like the song said. They were going their separate ways, but they were doing it with love and respect. The song wasn't just a reflection of their decision, it became a kind of mission statement for their divorce. The song was released in the spring of 1972, paired on a single with the rousing anthem Burning Love. It was a stark contrast. One side was the explosive, charismatic performer, the Caesar of Vegas. The other side was the heartbroken father, the vulnerable man behind the jumpsuit. The public knew about the separation, the news was out. And here was the official soundtrack to the breakup. It allowed his fans to feel like they understood what he was going through. It humanized him. The king was not immune to the same heartaches as everyone else. He lost love. He worried about his child. He felt pain. Over the years, the song has become one of his most poignant and beloved ballads. It's not played as often as the big hits, but for those who know his story, it holds a special significance. It's impossible to listen to it without thinking of Elvis, Priscilla, and a young Lisa Marie. It's a testament to the power of music to capture a specific, personal moment and make it universal. Millions of people have gone through the pain of a family breaking up. Millions have had to have that impossible conversation. Millions have worried about their children. The song gives voice to that quiet, shared experience. It's also a story about friendship. About Red West seeing his friend in pain and using his own talent to offer him a way to express it. He didn't offer advice or platitudes. He gave him a song. He gave him words for a feeling that might have been too difficult to form on his own. In doing so, he gave Elvis a gift that was both deeply personal and universally relatable. So, no, it wasn't a prediction in the psychic sense. He didn't write a song in 1969 that foretold a breakup in 1972. But the song was a premonition of a different kind. It laid out the emotional blueprint for how they would navigate the end of their marriage. It articulated the sadness, the maturity, and the child-focused approach that would define their post-divorce relationship. He sang about the kind of breakup he hoped to have, even as he was in the thick of it. And in the end, that's the kind of breakup they achieved. It's a story about how life and art can become so intertwined that you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. The song needed his life to give it meaning, and his life at that moment seemed to need the song to make sense of it all. It's a perfect, heartbreaking loop. The events inspired the lyrics gave voice to the events, and the performance immortalized the feeling. When you hear that gentle piano intro and his voice comes in, soft and full of sorrow, you're not just listening to a pop song. You're listening to a man processing the end of his family in real time. You're hearing the sound of a fairy tale ending, not with a bang, but with a quiet, sad conversation between two people who once shared a dream. Oh, it's a sad story, but it's a real one, and the song that tells it, the song that captured it all so perfectly, is called Separate Ways.